Hello, hello. Welcome to Empower and Ignite Transformation Podcast with Alicia and Nicole. If you are new to our channel, we would like for you to subscribe, like, and share. I'm excited today. Hi, Alicia. How are you? We have a special guest as well.
Yes, I am doing good. I'm doing good. How are you doing this morning? Let me ask that first.
I'm doing well. I'm doing
That's
well. It's raining here in
mhm.
Michigan, but I'm doing good.
Yes, and it's raining, pouring down in Georgia. We have a
Yeah.
whole situation happening down here, okay? Um, but I am
Okay.
so super excited. I'm so super excited about today's episode. We have a colleague of mine joining us today. As we know, we're entering that Men's Mental Health Month, and so it's nice to have a male perspective, right? With a male insight on how he view mental health therapy and things like that. So, of course, we want to welcome Erwin Lee. Welcome to Empower and Ignite podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you,
Th-
Erwin.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it because I consider it an honor to be part of the discussion.
Yeah, we're so excited. So definitely, you are our first guest on our podcast. And so that's exciting. But then also the fact that Men's Mental Health Month is such a important topic and important for us to definitely advocate for men to be open to seeking mental health. So I'm excited about today's topic.
Sure. Absolutely
Definitely.
excited to talk about it. Definitely for sure.
Yeah, so can you give us a little background on you yourself? I know you're a colleague of Alicia's. You practice in Atlanta.
Yes. Yes. So I am uh, received my master's in mental health counseling at Trinity International University in Florida. I was practicing, well, not practicing. I received my degree there, and it was a great experience. I also had about 15 years of counseling experience, whether that is pastoral counseling, in-home counseling with families. I have been doing this for a little bit, and
Okay, so a
um,
diverse
and I
background.
absolutely, and I currently work with a group of men at a recovery center, doing group therapy with them at this time, as well as work with Alicia at Out the Box.
Okay, okay. A wealth of knowledge, experience, diverse background. So definitely. So we're gonna dive in, y'all.
Let's dive on
Okay.
in.
S- You want to go,
So,
Alicia?
yes, I did.
Go
I
ahead.
just had a question right off the bat, just in general, right? As a male and then a
Yeah,
black man, right? Growing
yes.
up, what did you hear about mental health? How did they define it? How did the your family, friends, school, how did it happen? Like, how did you hear? What did you hear about it?
So really, as I was growing up, it wasn't really a discussion at all. Um, I began to learn more about counseling therapy, mental health with my first master's, and also just what I feel is a gifting, that I was very intrigued about helping others in terms of their mental health. Eventually, turned with men, in terms of because we don't like talking about mental health. We don't like talking about, typically. I'm just saying in general. I'm not saying all men, but in
Right.
general, we don't like talking about our mental health. We are always taught to just keep it bottled up, keep it moving. And so it wasn't really a discussion when I was growing up. But as I became older, just became a lot more intrigued in some of that, my background, my history, and some of the things that I've gone through, and how mental health really helped me work through some of my issues. And so that's how I heard about it. After I became older, and here I am trying to help others in that vein as well.
Okay. So I often when I think about men's mental health, and when I've worked with men, I will often hear them say, they were told growing up, suck it up, stop
Yeah.
crying, I'm gonna give you something to cry for. Boys don't cry. And
Mhm.
so they took that on
Yeah.
as being the way to be. And so the emotions get suppressed.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I tell my clients that, it was a disservice in somebody telling them to not cry and to suck it up, and that really isn't how you process emotions. You're really just suppressing it. At some point, it has to come out.
Yeah. And that is very true. I think a lot of times we are told because we're looked as men we're taught about strength
Mhm.
and really we think our strength is not expressing anything and just making sure that everyone thinks we're okay. And that's not the case. As a matter of fact, there's more strength in admitting that something's going on in the right circle. I run a group at Recovery and it's center and it's an all male group. And one of the things I often I often mention to them is make sure um, if you're not doing well to talk to someone as I'm pleasantly surprised, they're open. So I think more men are becoming more and more open to the whole concept of therapy. But of course, there's always that lingering thing in the back, that voice telling us, no, suck it up.
Yeah.
Don't say anything because you're not being a man. And I think that's a little bit of the toxic masculinity coming in there too. Um, so yeah, I think that one of the things that as we come up, as we grow up, we're told that so much is ingrained in us to the point that now when it's acceptable for us and acceptable in terms of society, now it's it, people opening up now, but it's taking a minute, you know. And sometimes we like to go back to default, like most of us do. So
Do
yeah.
you find that because of more people talking about men's mental health, and I noticed that like whether it's celebrities, rappers, things of that nature, when I think about me starting my practice in 2017, I had a couple of male clients, but I know now I have more male clients and more clients. And so I'm looking at like the prior history or just in not hearing so much of mental health talked about. And then now you hear it so often through celebrities and different rappers. And I will ask clients, so what made you come to therapy? And whether they say it was a podcast, or it was somebody that I heard. And so, in dismantling that stigma around men's mental health, I think definitely is a benefit. And I'm noticing a difference. Are you noticing that as well? What are you two seeing?
Absolutely. I noticed that the more it's talked about and the more it's accepted, specifically from those who we see, whether it is athletes,
Mhm.
music in the music industry, or whatever industry, if it's more accepted by those that we follow, we see, I just believe that it's more accepted. Um I think that I think when you have people talk about it more, and you have groups, and you're told and taught it's a safe place, because a lot of times as men, what we tend to do is we don't feel safe. We think our business is going to get out there on the street, if you will,
Yeah.
and and so making sure we let them know it's a safe place. I always tell my group, that, make sure you have that connection to someone. Because I agree, all therapists for everybody. Make sure you have that connection with a therapist that you're comfortable with and that you're able to share with. And yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think the more it's talked about, the more open people are becoming to it. And I think the more we encourage each other to go through therapy. I think you'll see more. I think you'll see more of an openness. I think also generational.
Mm-hmm.
Because generational. I'm noticing. I have two. I have two young adults, if you will, and I'm seeing that within their friend circles, the more are in tune to their mental health. So I think our younger generation are all in. It's me with my Gen X people.
Okay.
we have to get, we have to be more open up. But I think that's starting to occur, and that's because it's opening up, to the public.
Yeah, definitely. The more
Yeah.
dialogue, what I'm hearing. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Yes,
Auntie
and I
Frank.
know that you mentioned being safe, right? Providing
Yeah.
men with a safe space where their business don't have to get out in the street. Now, what else advice would you have as a man? You're talking to your friends, right? Other men to get them to see and the positive of therapy, or because I know, of course, we are all advocates for therapy and
Of
the
course.
importance of taking care of your mental health. So, like, what other ways would you kind of motivate them to what signs that, hey, you really should go look at and start seeking therapy?
Well, I typically ask them, I ask the question, if you're doing certain things to help. So, of course, in addictions, we'll say, they're in recovery. So if it's something like you're using a substance, I'm like, well, how's that working out for you? Are you still in the same place, or are you seeing yourself um, uh, becoming more and more healthy? And most will say no. And so that's my intro to say, okay, well, maybe there's certain things that's happened in your childhood, that you may want to discuss. I also say, I say this to my kids all the time. All of us have something. Every one of us have something that we have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And because you have something that you've gone through, whether it is family, friends, whomever, because you have something you've gone through, it's imperative to get just to work on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, especially as men, we don't we are thinking we have to do everything. We say that we have to have the solutions and all of this stuff, and I let them know, I'm like, no, you don't have to have all the answers. You all need some assistance in some way. Then from a clinical standpoint, I would say, okay, if it's sadness, how have you been feeling sadness, throughout the week, for like at least 5, 6 days, for the past 2 weeks? And if it's yes, if it's something that you can't function, if the answer is yes, then you may need to go ahead and seek. The bottom line is pretty much, if you sense that whatever is bothering you, whatever's going on with you, is affecting your daily living, and you sense yourself stagnant, it may be time to really sit down and talk to somebody. And so that's how I go about it, with my friends, or anyone else who may be a little skeptical about therapy. I do have this conversation with my family quite often. And it's like, what's the benefit of therapy? And I would say is really to talk through the things that you don't feel comfortable talking to everyone else about. We have our family. I have my wife, of course, but there may be some things you don't feel comfortable talking to people that are that close to you. You have a person that you can have that conversation with, without any type of judgment, without any of the little physical cues that we see, like rolling eyes, some teeth, like you, or even the catchphrase we like to say, oh, you should know better, and blah blah. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's where I would go. Just saying someone safe that you can really talk to without judgment.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes
that's
sense.
definitely good. Yeah. Alicia, what were you about to say?
No, I was saying yes, that makes sense. That was some good ways to kind of, identify, okay, I am having, like he said, those unhappy moments and things like that, the stress. I do need that safe space. Those are really key things to say, okay, maybe seeking a therapy. It's time. Maybe it's time for me to step into that lane.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, okay, so Erwin, likely if you were communicating with friends or family or even in your different groups that you would present why you would seek the therapy, but also the benefits of therapy. So often people think that they don't want to go talk on a couch and they're just talking.
Mhm.
And so they think that that's all therapy is, but it really is where you develop techniques and tools
Correct.
and skills to be able to process thoughts and emotions. And so you do have that safe place. It is where it's no bias and judgment. And so you are learning different perspectives and the tools and skills necessary because life
Mhm.
gonna be life, and that's what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah, that definitely. And I like what you said, Nicole, because that's what I was going to go to. And what I tell my family, you know, it, we think we have all the answers to certain things, but when something comes up and trauma comes up and you have that response, you may not have the answers, and that's where there becomes in to have those tools, the mindfulness, the CBT, DBT, all of this stuff,
Mhm.
and those strategies that come underneath those. You'd be surprised. Again, I go back to my group because this is a group of men. you know, um, they often say, I thought there was a bunch of they use colorful language. So I won't use it on here. They think therapy is not worth their while. But when they tried the tools
Mhm.
and they use the tools that their therapist recommended and what we teach in group, then it's almost like it works. I can't believe it actually works. I mean, with I think about mindfulness. That's the one that we. It's like you mean tell me you want me to do these deep breathing in and out, and that don't even sound like it's gonna work. Try it, and they tried it, and they're like, man, I've had such peace. Some of them even said, I've never witnessed this much peace in my life.
Mhm.
you know, and so the thing about trying those techniques you would never think about,
Mhm.
playing the script to the end, like for example, it actually works. And I think really as therapists, when we're working with men, making sure that, you walk them through the technique and seeing how they feel about them and looking to see how it works. And I think that they'll eventually figure out that it actually doesn't work with time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's a good thing because what you're saying is, hey, it's not cookie cutter in the sense of
No.
one fits all, right? It really is like taking them through the process and showing them the different techniques to identify if this works for them, but if it needs an adjustment,
Hmm.
so that they can really benefit from therapy. And then I like that you said, okay, so some really become self-aware and like, wow.
Yes.
I
Right.
didn't think that this was going to be a benefit, but it really is the
Yeah.
takeaway. So I
Yeah.
like that, definitely.
It's like one of those things that you don't believe it until you see it, right? Until you
That's
actually
it.
start walking that path, actually start doing those breathing exercises. Yeah, it may sound silly, right? It's like, oh, that's not going to calm me down. But until you actually put yourself out there and try it and
Right.
see how your, nervous system respond to it, you don't know if it's going to be beneficial or not. You just kind of just like because of like they said, the stigma or things you heard, you just like, I just don't want to do it, and a lot of people just back away from it. So it is important to just put yourself out there, just give it a shot and see
Yeah.
how it go.
And
Right.
then not only just give it a shot, what I often tell guys too is don't think you're gonna try it once it's gonna work.
Oh, yeah.
You have to practice this.
Very
And I often, I'm not trying to be that's not what I know women with all everyone plays sports. But in terms of my guys, I tell them this. I said, look at it as you're playing sports, right?
Mhm.
Who's played sports before? Half of them raise their hand. And when you're playing sports, you have to practice the plays. Because you don't practice the plays, then you're not going to be successful at winning the game or overcoming your opponent. And so when I say it like that, then it makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, because how do you expect to just do something once and say it's going to work? It's not miracle. Then also I mentioned you said cookie cutter. I mentioned them to them also that every technique is not for everybody.
Right.
You want to find the one that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you figure out the one that works for you, then you stick with it. I know we used to say this. I often say, you should have at least five in your toolbox. At least five. You may probably more, but at least five that work. That work for you in different situations because every situation does not warrant the same technique. So I also mentioned that too. So yeah, so I just wanted just to piggyback on that because a lot of times people say, yeah, it don't work, especially with us. I don't have all that time, okay, I'll try it once, see if it works. Hey, it worked. What's going on? Try it again. At least
Yeah,
Yeah,
2 or 3 times a week to start, at least, and see what happens.
right.
definitely.
That's a good part too, because
Yeah.
of course, you can't try it just once. You got to work the program, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you said, like Michael Jordan didn't become a famous basketball player by shooting once. That's not a thing. Like he went out there and he did it time
Yeah.
after time after time until he perfected it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that that was really, like you said, I think that that's a good way to keep the motivation of why you should keep going, why you should really put your effort first, work the program. Don't just go and, because I know, like, especially with men, right? They come in and they have little words. They don't have much,
Yeah.
and it's almost like pulling teeth as a therapist, right?
Yeah.
To pull words
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk, let's engage. And it's like some men are men a few words and that's who they are. And
Yeah.
so that is always a challenge, but it's a challenge in the sense of you have to challenge yourself by finding those words to express yourself. If it's a written, if it's a maybe I'm going to send an email because I can't say what I need to say at this
Mm-hmm.
moment because I can't find the words. Okay,
Right.
you can work with it, right? As therapists,
Mm-hmm.
we just want you to be able to find ways to express yourself.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I think that's
Absolutely.
so key, Alicia, because it really is when a client is coming in, and especially if it is a man that is not expressive, right? We as therapists, we are trained to meet people where they're at and,
Mm-hmm.
like sit with them in that space of when they're ready, right? So we're not forcing, but also when Erwin was saying like, finding the right fit, it sometimes isn't always the technique, it's also the therapist, right? Building rapport and
Mm-hmm.
making sure, and it's okay if the first therapist you sat with isn't the one. So often I know men want to get things done and like, hey, I'm here, let's get it done. But if that person isn't the right fit, it's okay to change. It's okay to find the right one because the benefit, our job, our role is to do no harm. And so
Absolutely.
we also want our clients to benefit and ensure that they're getting what they need. Sometimes we have to refer out because I might not specialize or be able to help you in what you need to achieve. So I want you to get that. It's not, anything about us. We're trained that we do no harm. So definitely, I'm glad you both were speaking on how you might have to adjust, change, tweak. It may not be just, okay, I showed up and then now everything is going to go one, two, three.
Mm-hmm. And I think a sense of realness too. I mean, um, the guys I deal with, I always say game no game. And it's if you're trying to put something over on them, it's not going to be effective. So I think even as therapists, just a sense of being real, and I think that goes a long way with guys as well because we want some we don't want the whole generic whatever. We don't want someone that was actually going to listen and again, you just mentioned earlier, not be judgmental. So
Right.
yeah, it's
So
important. Mm-hmm.
being genuine, authentic,
Yes,
showing up
absolutely.
and that space because people can sense genuineness if you are
Yeah.
being real with them, right?
Hmm.
And they do want support. So you want to ensure that they feel supported and that you are, a fit for them, so that you can help them on whatever they're wanting to achieve through therapy. How do you find, or what do you think, when you're running groups? Because I know, sometimes people like individual therapy, and then sometimes
Yes.
people like groups. Sometimes men are mandated or women are mandated. It depends on what the circumstances are. What do you find most effective when you're facilitating a group, or are you able to identify and say, hey, I think this person might benefit for individual?
Mm.
So it's a good question. When I do my group, but my guys are I'm actually mandating is but one thing that I hear, and I don't think it's because of me or anything like that, it's just because they're getting one of those aha moments. I'm not to quote Oprah, but I think that the main thing in terms of group that's the most effective that I'm seeing, like we mentioned it earlier, that genuineness. Someone came to me when I was doing the groups, and they were like, I think most of the guys really appreciate the fact that you are genuine, that you actually care. He said it a different way. I say it that
Hmm.
you care, and so the fact that that they see that and some of the guys even now that in my group now they'll say man, I've never heard this before. I've never heard it like this before, and so really honestly I think group is an extension to individual. I often encourage the guys. I say, I know while you're here, you have to do individual. But I encourage you to keep doing individual,
Mhm.
even after you leave, because what we talk about in group is just introductory. I'm just giving you introductory information. When you talk to your therapist, that's when you do the heavy lifting, the nuts and bolts of it. When you start talking about, your trauma, what I'm saying? You don't have that time to really talk about your trauma in group, but
Mhm.
it's more of an introductory. So I think group is a segue, honestly, into therapy. That's how I approach it anyway.
Okay.
Because I think that's it's a segue into individual.
Yeah, I like that because what you're saying is also when people are in groups, right? They know that they're not alone. They can
Hmm.
identify,
Yeah.
and so they hopefully is becoming more open to know that their struggle is not an isolated case, but then them needing to do their individual work. So it's an opening. I really like how you said that.
Yeah, and yeah, it is, and oftentimes, when we introduce a technique and things like that, they're like, man, I'm gonna talk to my therapist about that. I'm interested in that, and that's what it is supposed to be. I tell them, any group I've ever run, I said this is not individual therapy. This is introduction. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because, group kind of takes a little bit of like that pressure off of that one
Yes.
on one, that deep dive, right?
Mhm.
So now for the men, as a man, right? For the men who are afraid to transition into that individual, one on one session, who are afraid to ask for that help, what advice would you give?
Um, I would say just try it. I would say just try. And if you go back to the groups, in terms of groups, actually, what you'll find is the more the closer the group become, they'll encourage. A lot of guys encourage the guys in the group. Hey, listen, man, okay, you can do this. I would, they encourage them. Have you seen a therapist? You talk to your therapist about that, and they'll encourage them. But I would just say for someone who is on the fence, I would say at least try. Try it. Really, what are you looking to accomplish? Have you met your goals? Is there something blocking you from meeting your goals? Whether that is financially, to relational,
Right.
in terms of career goals, is something blocking that?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, yeah, then I say, well, maybe you should talk it through with somebody. You know, I mean, are you having issues with your children if you have kids and you not know how to figure it out and it's creating like undue stress? Maybe it's something you may want to talk to someone. So I would just say just at least try and see how it works. And as a friend, because I do have some friends that ask me that question, I say and then if you want to talk through how it went with me, it's fine. I can't be a therapist. I'm too close, but if you want to talk through how it went, then I think that's good. Um I think that's key. I think those of us who are therapists and we have friends that are going to therapy, just checking this out. How's it going? Not go give me details. Just how's it going? Is it going okay? And I think that's it. Just little checking. So from a therapist standpoint, me checking in with my friends, and for me just talking to someone else, and just try it and give it time. Try it, give it time. If it works, cool. Try the techniques. You'll be surprised how much it'll impact you and actually almost save your life.
Yeah, it will. It's a
Yeah.
benefit like no other.
That's
That's so true.
yeah.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you're like, okay, so even with your group encouraging one another, because really, as facilitators of a group, we kind of let the group be the group, right? And they kind of, you can see who's the leaders in the group, and not that they need to lead the group, but the conversations and how group goes, because you're facilitating, but you
Right.
want them to build the rapport in their group sessions. And so just even with challenging people with their cognitions that may be negative and or fear of why won't you go to individual, right? Because you're
Right.
in this group, but what is your fear that's coming up that prevents you from actually scheduling an individual session?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really big.
And I think and I do think like you were saying, Nicole, as a facilitator, you're considered the expert. I say clear quote, but you're considered the expert, but still in all, the best groups, the most rewarding groups that I've seen, whether it is if I've led a group with a bunch of teenagers, because I've done it in high schools,
Mhm.
or whether it is I've led a group in recovery. When you see the participants saying encouraging one another, like and almost challenging too. It's
Right.
not just encouraging, challenging. Hey man,
Right.
listen, especially recovery. Hey, listen, man. I know what you're capable of. You know,
Mhm.
why don't you do this? Or even if they live in the same place or the same facility or whatever have you, it's like, hey, listen, you want to talk afterwards, man? Come on, let's talk. Or even when we have our breaks, because we have 15-minute breaks too. Them being able to talk to one another during breaks. I recall some guys sharing some deep things that have happened,
Mhm.
and when we've had breaks, some guys go to the person and talk to them and encourage them. I mean, some actually pray, I've heard that before too. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And so, yeah, that when you see that, you know that you see how effective groups can be and what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Wow. This is such a good one. I like that. I like that. I like the groups. So it's
Mhm.
almost like encouraging men, even try group therapy and then say,
Hmm.
Sure.
the individual, I
Yeah,
really like that. I think that, of course, touching on men's mental health is very important because it gets swept
absolutely.
under the rug so much. And, not on purpose, right? It's society, the way that history have been going for so long, we just men
Sure.
mental health just don't take, you know, the front chair. And it's time, right? It's time for,
Mhm.
the world, for all of us to take it more serious, and especially for men to take it more serious for themselves. And,
Mhm.
the month of, June
Yeah.
gives men that awareness that staying silent is, not showing strength. It's not showing strong. It's more strong to kind of be able to be honest and put yourself out there and express yourself like that. That right there, that
Mhm.
takes strength. It takes strength
Mhm.
to actually pick up the phone, call a therapist and say, it's time for me to prioritize my mental health. That takes strength.
Definitely,
Absolutely.
it surely does. And I know June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but we want it to be every month that we're advocating for men because so many
Absolutely.
men are suffering in silence
Right?
and they don't have to. They really don't have to. We need to
Mhm.
just dismantle the stigma
Mhm.
around mental health as a whole, but men's mental health, you know.
Mhm.
So I'm always advocating, of course, and as you two are as well, as therapists in the field. But the fact that we know the benefit of it from our own individual selves seeking therapy. And so I'm just really excited that we had the opportunity to have Erwin on to talk about men's mental health and dismantling the negative stigma around it, and showing up for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
appreciate you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very much. Thank you very much for having me on. And if I would, one last thing I could say to guys, say, listen, we get those checks. We're to the point now we go to the doctor, okay, and we check on our physical, but our physical and our mental are interconnected. So
Yes,
just like we have our doctors to check on our physical, let's check those experts who can help us with our mental because it'll lead to less stress and less heart attacks and all good stuff.
definitely.
So let's focus on mental as well, fellas.
Yes, and as always, remember, like, share, and subscribe. Take care.